Hello all, welcome to Sand Compounding. This is Sandeep Anand. I'm starting a new series called 20 for 2030. And what does that even mean? For investors in investing, the formula of compounding, which is very powerful, and the formula is P into 1 plus R by 100 whole to the power N. And N is an exponential factor. N is nothing but, we all know, it's a time invested, time we invest in the capital is invested in a business, or the tenure as we can call. And the tenure or longevity of our investment is very important because if we make investments in businesses that can sustain for 10 to 12 years with a good level of growth and at the right valuation, we are made home. The returns on the capital invested would be very high. Now, how do we find businesses which can run and which has such longevity of 10-12 years, especially in today's world of disruption? Every business is getting disrupted. Erstwhile, no wonder Warren Buffett, the legendary investor, used to find businesses which are least disruptive and that can run for a long time with growth, and he called it as moat. While moat investing, I don't know if it's really that relevant in today's generation because all businesses are getting disrupted with the advent of digital and mobile and internet. Now, identifying such businesses is a very difficult task, and I have tried my best to find out 20 such businesses which can pay way till 2030, and come 2030, in hindsight, these businesses would have been great to hold for such a longevity period. Now, how do we find these businesses? I've applied the principle of inversion, which I learned from Charlie Munger, and we look forward to 2030, and when we look back in hindsight, the inversion principle, based on that, what businesses could and why those businesses could sustain till that period is what I've done. So here are such 20 stocks, and one most important thing, not in investing, not all businesses are great investments at all point of time, but most point of time. So there could be reasons being valuation is one important factor which can control the time when we enter into a business. If there are frothy valuations, our returns would be mediocre. So it's very important to identify great longevity, great businesses which has longevity and at the same time that has good growth and the right valuation. So, but this could be a blueprint or a watch list that we can use to identify, and when the correction happens or recession happens, these great businesses could be a great entry point, could give a great entry point. Hope this gets interesting as we move on. Continuing my session in 20 for 2030 list, the next one is an African e-commerce company. It's a unicorn, which is actually a German-based firm called Jumia Technologies AG. Jumia Tech has been a very successful e-commerce player in Africa, where the logistics and the last mile fulfillment are the real challenges within the subcontinent. But Jumia Tech has gone ahead and established very well and created a name for itself, and it's become a unicorn. And these recently did an IPO in 2019, and Jumia Technologies, I'm more bullish on their prospects of Jumia Pay and their last mile fulfillment, which are their kind of competitive advantage within the portal. Now, there are other competitors like Amazon and Alibaba entering. This could very well be a acquisition candidate ahead in the next decade, but overall I'm sanguine about the prospects of this business, and let's see and analyze more in detail about Jumia Technologies. So Jumia Technologies, their platform consists of a marketplace which connect sellers with consumers, logistics service which enables the shipment and delivery of packages from sellers to consumers, and payment services which facilitates transactions among participants active on their platform in selected markets. So it's basically bringing the sellers and buyers together in their e-commerce platform. They also has all the adjunct services which are required for the e-commerce, like logistics, payments, and advertising. Now, Jumia is present in 6 regions in Africa, which consists of 12 countries, and together they account for almost 72% of Africa's GDP of 2 trillion euros, and 75% of African consumer expenditure of 1.4 trillion euros in 2018, according to IMF Euromonitor. Now, that's a staggering number, and they are present across 12 countries in African continent. And these 12 countries comprises almost 75% of Africa's GDP. Now, they provide consumers with easy access to number of adjunct services, as I said. In addition to e-commerce, they also have other services like restaurant, food delivery, hotel and flight booking, classified advertising. So they help sellers for classifieds. Then they have airtime recharge. and instant delivery. Now these are services which help any household people and make their lives easier. Everything can be done using mobile and on click of a button. Now Jumia Advertising, that they recently started, that is also in-house advertising agency which is dedicated marketing and advertising professionals. So they leverage the unique reach and data of customers on their platform, and through that Jumia Advertising, which is a subsidiary, it aims to drive measurable results for the brands and sellers, external advertising agencies, and even third-party advertisers. So this is in line with what Alibaba does in China. So they also have provide advertising services, and they get charge commission from the advertising services. Now their management, Jumia Technologies management has Sacha Poignac, who is a co-CEO of Jumia, and they have a focused CEO in Nigeria, because Nigeria is their largest market and fastest growing. That's Juliet Anema. And together they are Julian and Sacha and the others who are present on the board of Jumia Technologies. They are focused on Jumia's commitment to build a host of financial services marketplace and revenues commensurately from the consumers and partners using other services like Jumia Pay. So they are mainly focused on the financial services aspects like the payment platform, which is Jumia Pay, and then other things which are focusing on which are going to come to the platform like Jumia Lending for products such as loans and third-party credit scoring and insurance also. So a slew of other financial products are lined up for launching on their platform. They could do this because they have the whole consumers who are on the network, and they have the data of the consumer, so the underwriting becomes easy. They can cross-sell the products to the consumers and leverage on the existing data that they have from the consumer database. Now this has led to Jumia moving into working capital loans for vendors on its platform. That's another brilliant offering, like what PayPal and others does, right? The working capital loans on the platform. Now looking at their data, so they have marketplace KPIs, which are like the gross merchandise volume, which is in euros, measured in shown in euros here. So that's growing by 39%. That's a whopping number, and it has reached up to 275 million euros in Q3 alone, in Q3 alone of 2019, and the annual active consumer is also growing at a staggering pace, which is 80%. Would you believe that number? And the growth has been significant, and in the last quarter, that is Q3 2019, it has reached 5.5 million annual active consumers. That's again a big number. Now the number of orders, so they track pretty interesting figures for KPIs, like other than the revenue growth alone, they are also tracking number of orders. So they are also looking at monetizing the customer stay in the platform, or the time spent by the customer on the platform for selling adjunct other series of services and products, and that's why they're measuring all this, right? So you could see that the number of orders have grown by 100%. That's again a huge growth, and it has reached 7 million number of orders in just Q3 2019 alone. Now they are also tracking Jumia Pay KPIs, which I am sanguine about. So the whole storyline for me, the narrative is about their payments platform, which is a high margin business, and measuring the KPIs. So their total payments volume, what they call TPV as industry standard, in just Q3 2019 alone grew by 95%, and it's running at around 120 million rate at annually, right? So that's around 120 million euros they are having as a TPV on an annual basis, and it's growing 100%, right? And Jumia Pay transactions, they had around 2 million transactions in just Q3 alone. That's growing by 260%. So you could see growth all around, kicking all across their services, whether it is payments, whether it's marketplace, advertising, everything is growing, and because it's a niche, it's in the nascent stage. This slide shows Jumia sales across geographical breakdown. So geographically, they have West Africa, North Africa, South Africa, and East Africa, which are the key four zones. And West Africa has the highest gross with close to 80. It's close to 80 million euros, and so the North Africa being second closest, which is the second, and then there is South Africa. So I think Nigeria might be the largest market if I'm not wrong, and then South Africa as a country itself. Now you could see a pictorial representation of their great products snapshot on their website, and the geographical breakdown. So they don't have presence in few countries in like Tanzania and Cameroon. I believe they pulled out of these markets, so they are very using their intelligence with the customer driven data and analytics to move out of market which are not growing significantly. Now coming to revenues, profitability, balance sheet analysis. Now the firm is focused on growing consumer adoption, usage and engagement on their platform. So these are the three aspects or pillars they are focused on, like the adoption of the platform, usage on the platform and engagement, how the customer engage themselves in their platform. Monetizing, this is their focus. Now in parallel with driving top line growth and development of Jumia Pay, these are two main growth drivers. They also focused on gross profit, which increased by 45% in Q3 2019 to 18 million euros approximately, and that's significant because the gross profit is important to self reinforce the growth, right, to self feed the growth consistently over quarter. Now marketplace revenue increased by 52% during the same period. So they are focused on gross profits so that they can fund their growth, or rather I would say fuel their growth using the gross profits. Now the sales and advertising expense as a percentage of gross merchandise volume GMV decreased by 143 basis points or bips from 6.1% of GMV in Q3 2018 last year to 4.7 in Q3 2019. Now they have consciously reduced the sales and advertising expense so that the EBITDA loss, the operating loss, comes down, and it did come down from a negative 18% in Q3 2018 to negative 16.5% in Q3 2019. Now, which is good. So they are focused on profitable growth, and they are recalibrating their spend with respect to advertising, sales, and also other operating expenses, so that they achieve the profitability down the line. Now the revenue breakdown is given there, so you could see that the marketplace revenue is growing at 52%, and that is a significant portion of their growth. And in the marketplace growth, they have highest coming up from commissions, that is commissions from the sales by the third party. Then they have fulfillment revenue, which is the last mile fulfillment of the goods and products, that is to the consumers. Then there is marketing and advertising, which is not much because they recently started, but is growing the fastest at 125%. And then there are a lot of value added services on their platform. Now the platform revenue is the maximum part of their revenue, and that is growing at 20%. It's not much growth, but they also are accepting the first party revenue, first party products, just to get the coverage of the products on the platform. So but their focus is to eventually move from first party to third party revenue. Now looking at the balance sheet strength, they are focused on capital allocation and ratio. So they are focused on deploying the capital to newer areas of growth like financial services, lending, and also the other advertising services, and also Jumia Pay. Now they have a cash of 291 million euros at the end of 2019 Q3, and they have operating cash flow 9 for the 9 months FY19. It was standing at operating cash flow was a loss of 105 million euros. They are losing money at this stage, and market capitalization is around $650 million. So they are like roughly trading at 2 times the cash approximately. That is pretty interesting valuation, right, metrics. And the reason for that is they had some fraudulent report coming over by one of the investment firms, and because of which they had to go through scrutiny in the marketplace, and they have because that has impacted the valuation. So they got listed, they did the IPO in last year, and they had 80% fall of the IPO price, a peak IPO price, and it was around $45 IPO price listed in Nasdaq, and it came down all the way to $6. Now it's an interesting opportunity or time to buy Jumia Technologies that way. Now, why I think Jumia Technologies will be a great business to hold in hindsight when we look back in 2030. So, a couple of things to highlight. The market size is huge, and the total addressable market is big in African continent. Not many players have imploded there. Alibaba and Amazon has been trying hard, and these for all you know, Jumia Technologies could be even a acquisition candidate down the line. Now the whole African continent, they have less than 1% of retail sales through e-commerce, which is negligible when you compare to 15%, 14% in US, 20% in China, and 20% in India. It's negligible. You compare the retail sales is just 1% through e-commerce and mobile platforms. And Nigeria and South Africa are expected to garner around 10% of global e-commerce share in the next decade. So that shows the opportunity pipeline, and these countries in themselves are so big enough to get a big pie of the global e-commerce. Now, through the operations, they have developed a deep understanding of the economic, technical, and geographic and cultural complexities that are unique to Africa, like any continent and any other country, and that varies from country to country. Now, they possess extensive local knowledge of the logistics. Logistics is the biggest challenge in Africa, is what the CEO and many other market study reveals, and maybe that's the reason Amazon and Alibaba couldn't still entrench deep into the pockets of the rural African population and sub-Saharan countries. But when you take countries like Nigeria and Kenya and South Africa, they are very well advanced in terms of logistics. Now, payment landscape is a big opportunity, and that is the single most factor I'm so sanguine about Jumia Technologies prospect. Payments, not only payments on the platform, but Jumia Pay could expand and proliferate across other offline methods of payments, like bill payments, P2P, peer-to-peer, person-to-person payments. Cash transactions is huge in these kind of developing nations and underdeveloped nations, and the cash economy could eventually move out, and with the mobility and mobile platforms, 5G, which is an internet which is prevalent and fast penetrating into deeper pockets in Africa, the payment services alone could become much bigger than their e-commerce platform. We have seen it happen in across countries and geographies. It happened with Alipay and WeChat Pay in China. It happened with PayPal, Square in US. It happened with Paytm and other payment players in India, and even in Southeast Asia like Indonesia. So it has happened across emerging nations, even Brazil with Mercado Pago and Pegzagaro. We have seen a host of new players coming in. So payments platform is a very powerful business with huge margins, and that's a real monopoly they can establish if can get the customers on board. Now eventually online platform sales from payments TPV from the online and e-commerce platform can become minuscule in front of the offline payments eventually. That has happened in there is a precedence across other emerging nations, and it could very well play out in Africa as well. Now they took full advantages of mobile centric aspects of the African market, and they have adopted a mobile first approach in product development and marketing efforts, which allow to expand audience for goods and services, increase engagement, customer engagement and conversion with data, and reduce their consumer acquisition cost. So overall, super sanguine about the prospects of Jumia and Jumia Pay and also their advertising platforms for the next decade, and hope this whole session you found it useful. Thank you.